What's going on, y'all? Today's guest is artist manager, production manager, and podcaster Luke Pierce. Luke is one of the managers and the production manager for Works Entertainment, where they work with artists such as Straight No Chaser, Home Free, Brass Against, Brian Culbertson, Brian Newman, John Mclaughlin, Lucky Chops, Morgan James, and Striking Matches. Such a fun and diverse roster, a lot of great talent on there. He's also one of the hosts of the very popular music industry touring podcast, Promoter 101, where you have over 200 episodes with some amazing guests in the world of touring, from promoters to agents to managers, people behind the scenes. It's one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis. So learn more about Luke and all the things that he does at worksentertainment.com or promoter101.net, and we'll have all that info in the show notes. The link to the show notes is right down here below in the description. And please subscribe to the channel, help spread the word. So many great conversations on this podcast, and I think this can really help a lot of musicians that are trying to learn about the music business, and people that want to be behind the scenes of the music business, the aspiring managers, promoters, agents, tour managers, and so on. So thank you all so much for all the support. I hope you enjoy this conversation with the amazing Luke Pierce.
Live the life you love.
So I was going through your Instagram feed a lot, and I noticed a lot of pictures about food. And before we get into the business stuff and the serious stuff, Nashville's a really good food town. What are some must-go-to places for anyone that's visiting Nashville? And then where's the best place for hot chicken?
Oh, man. Wow. This is the best first question of any interview that Nashville is got an incredibly credible culinary scene here. We've got, I heard some stat recently that second to Minneapolis in the Central Time Zone, we have the highest number of James Beard nominees or winners living in Nashville. So our food scene in the past 7-8 years has been absolutely exploding. And we're lucky to call, people like Sean Brock, who started Husk in Charleston, who brought Husk here. He's got a handful of things. He's a resident of Nashville. RJ Cooper. I've got to get a phenomenal shout out to RJ Cooper, who owns a restaurant called St. Stephen in Germantown. Probably one of my favorite go-to places, and a reference to the Grateful Dead song. So if you're in Germantown, absolutely check out his place. My personal favorite thing in the world in Nashville is actually a cheeseburger at a pizza place.
Okay.
It's called Emmy Squared, which is in the Gulch. And there's 5 or 6 Emmy Squares. There's one in Brooklyn, one in Manhattan, one in Philadelphia, and then 2 in Nashville now. But it's a Detroit-style pizza place that has this phenomenal burger that I think about once a day. And I probably have once a week during COVID, during takeout, for as long as it's takeout is my go-to splurge on a Friday night, is going to get this. It's called the Little Big Matt, and it's a $21 cheeseburger, but it's so good. It's really, really phenomenal. But I'll just rattle off a few things that I love. In East Nashville, you've got Pelican and Pig, which is a new place next to a tiki bar called Pearl Diver, which is also phenomenal for cocktails, worth checking out. We've got Margot in East Nashville, which is great. There's a new place called Set Sun in the Van Dyke Hotel that was a pop-up from the guy that started Treehouse in Nashville. Those are all great places. So, I could sit here and talk food in Nashville for this entire podcast, and I won't bore everybody with it. But if you're in Nashville and you want a recommendation, you can hit me up on socials and I'll give you one. And if you're looking for hot chicken, I think the best is Prince's. And there's a Prince's now in kind of what they call the Brentioch area, somewhere between Brentwood and Antioch, that actually has a proper sit-down place. And Prince's was the original hot chicken place. And the original one was no silverware. You're eating on top of milk crates, in a, basically an old gas station kind of vibe. And they have a proper one now that's a little bit more sit-down and highbrow with silverware and everything, and it's great. But Prince's, or if you're looking for the spiciest hot chicken, I would say Bolton's. Bolton's is great right there in East Nashville as well too. So can't really go wrong.
Nice, love it. I'll throw some of those in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Nashville, and how have you seen the Nashville scene change since you've been there? Because you bounced around a little bit before you landed here. And a lot of people still to this day, which I'm surprised by, still think of Nashville as a place for country music, which it obviously is. But I feel like there's so much more to Nashville. I guess tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, I really started working in music at the end of 2010, and I was in Los Angeles for a good bit of time. I was out there for about 6.5 years. I moved out here in September 2016, but I was really for most of 2015 essentially going back and forth between Los Angeles and Nashville. And all of 2016, I had an apartment here. I was going back and forth and essentially spending like at least a week a month here. And so to kind of see the changes, I remember the first time I came here in 2012, I got invited around by a buddy of mine who was an agent. They were at a Tim McGraw's secret show at the Station Inn, which is a tiny, like 120 cap bluegrass place. It's probably the best place to see music, and it's in the right smack dab in the middle of the Gulch, which is getting redeveloped. And the Gulch was like a little shady then, and now it's like the Mecca center for all things quintessential new Nashville. To see that place kind of explode in 7 years is just kind of a reminder of all the growth that Nashville's seen in the last 10 years. And sadly, a lot of it came from the flood in 2010 that really wiped out most of East Nashville and caused a big spur of redevelopment and gentrification in a lot of places. But from a professional standpoint, Nashville's is become way more than country music. It's been doing that for the last decade or so. And when I started coming here and kind of full time in 2014, started 2015, there were names like Prescription Songs, which is Dr. Luke's publishing company. Then Katie Fagan was coming in from Los Angeles. She was coming here a lot. She kind of came to town and I think was really, between her and the folks at Cobalt, really kind of stamped a mark on pop music in Nashville, and from like an established LA to New York connection. Of course, there's your big name pop stars, but in terms of cultivating and developing scene, they came in and signed 24 kind of pop writers that were kind of bubbling around that, and kind of started to give some infrastructure and some life and support into that system. And now you're seeing folks like Rusty Gaston, who's now running Sony ATV here, and his company This Music, had cuts from the cuts last year. I think were widely more pop than they were country before he really started that. Everything from Camila Cabello to Shawn Mendes to on the other end on all the country songs that they had for that. So I think we've started to see resources like A&Rs and creative folks come here from New York and Los Angeles for the past 10 years. And Steve Robinson from Atlantic Records, who signed Haley Williams and Paramore from Orlando, was another big kind of move to Nashville and a coup in terms of attracting executive talent down here. And that's all those people moved here in the last 6, 7, well, Steve's probably 8 or 9 years now, but that's kind of how long the scene has kind of been starting to cultivate itself. And it's really still burgeoning today. I mean, you're seeing a lot of pop deals come out of here on the publishing side of things. Not so many signings on the record label yet, but we haven't really broken something through in pop, I think, in a really meaningful way, in the way that LA or New York has yet. And there's a lot of people trying to do it, but it just hasn't been completely done yet. And we'll get there, though, because there's just more people kind of escaping Los Angeles and New York to come to Nashville for sure. Yeah,
for sure. I definitely agree that Nashville's constantly growing and evolving. And I always tell my students, of course, LA and New York, yes, they're enormous places for mainstream pop music and for hip hop. But I always describe it as New York is number one thing is probably more fashion, where LA is more movies, and Nashville is just purely music. A giant percentage of the population in Nashville works in the music industry. I think it used to be close to 50%. I don't know if that's changed, but you can just walk into a coffee shop and chances are that half the people there are working in the music industry or in some capacity.
Yeah, that's one of the things I couldn't figure out why I liked Nashville so much. And I think I came here with a buddy from Los Angeles who's a producer, and he's like, it's music is top dog here. And when you realize in Los Angeles how big TV is, and then how bigger film is, and then how big video games are,
Right.
It's like we are a fractional portion of the billions of dollars that are being generated in terms of income here. So people treat that business accordingly. Movies and film are way bigger in Los Angeles because they make way more money for people.
Right.
But in Nashville, there's really not People might argue with me about this, but there's really not a TV scene. There's really not a film scene here.
Right.
There's the show Nashville, but that was subsidized entirely by the state, and that's the last really major production that's rolled through Nashville, Tennessee as a thing, and it reflects that. People treat it with a little bit more respect. I think it's the one kind of entertainment thing that we have going for us here in town, and people recognize it that way.
Yeah. Sure. Tell everyone a little bit about what you currently do in the music industry and about Works Entertainment.
Yeah, sure. So for the past almost 10 years, I've been working in artist management, all kind of with the same crew of people. My business partner and the founder and the CEO of our company, David Britz, I went to work for him straight out of school, working in another management company, and then we broke off and started our own firm. A little less than 7 years ago at this point now. So Works Entertainment's been around as some form of it since October 2012. As Works since the early 2014. But we're an independent music company. It's a little bit more than management these days. We have a lot of label services that we're in the mix on, whether that be managing clients' independent labels or creating joint ventures or partly owning with clients on their record label projects. We also produce a handful of small boutique festivals, live events, and exhibitions that are 3,000 to 5,000 people, usually focused on a very niche high ticket market, high ticket value market. And then we do a handful of investing in consulting and advisory work. So I came kind of from the finance world of things, and I've kind of been able to apply some of those skills to advisory work and investments in music and technology. So we do a little bit of everything, but our bread and butter business is working with the 9 artist management clients that we have on all of the businesses that they own or operate. So that's a little bit of my day. It's a little bit of everything these days.
Yeah, I'm going to share the Promoter 101 episode that you and Steiny did, where you kind of talk about your story so people can get the backstory. But one thing I've heard you mention on that episode, which I want to kind of dive into before we get into the music business stuff. One of my mentors taught me always to have multiple streams of income, and that's definitely come true now after getting laid off from AEG. As we're not pennying quite as much, but before we take a deep dive into the management and business stuff, I heard you talk on an episode about getting into real estate. Have you already been investing in real estate? What do you guys do when it comes to real estate? And I do have a question that might benefit artists next.
Yeah, sure. No, I didn't really start getting into real estate until about 5-6 years ago now. I first kind of just chipped in some cash towards a jointly funded thing that a couple friends were putting together at Penn State, where I went to school, buying up a quadplex and just investing some money away from there for return, and kind of got interested in it really when I came here to Nashville, and kind of got busy in the redevelopment and Airbnb business. So, which during COVID has been a little bit challenging, but surprisingly okay, kind of floating through the times. But we don't really necessarily do anything through our company on the real estate side of things, but personally, I've kind of looked at real estate as a great side investment for me and a great way to kind of build wealth and develop passive income, which is in the day the mailbox money that you're looking for. The music and management business is so much of you eat what you kill, and the idea of doing that when I'm 75 doesn't really appeal to me. So I love this, but I don't know if I would love it for that long. So
one question I always write down when I see someone has some kind of role in real estate, I've never asked it, so I'm going to ask it to you for the first time, and maybe we'll open a door for a future episode. But I don't know if you're familiar with the term house hacking, but for the listeners, house hacking basically has many extremes, right? So it's buying a house and then renting out some of the bedrooms. The most extreme is having a 3 or 4 bedroom and you sleep on a couch and you rent out all your bedrooms. And then the least extreme is what they call luxury house hacking, is where you buy a house that has a mother-in-law quarter, and let's say you have a family, you're not going to just rent out couches and bedrooms, and you just rent out that mother-in-law quarter. I feel like artists, and especially touring people, once we can tour again, would really benefit from house hacking to make extra income and even reduce their own overhead. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just say that house hacking is a phenomenal way to not just be burning a check on rent every month, especially, and this is hard to say for musicians that are working in Los Angeles or New York, where it's tough to find, but I'm sure there are deals out there. And even if you don't think you have the money to go plunk down and buy a $1.5 million apartment in New York, you should check out some of the resources that are out there, because what you don't realize is that, with the way modern lending is these days, even with like a little bit of cash saved in a reasonable market, you can be out there essentially living for free, having somebody pay, a majority of your mortgage or your debt notes on your properties, and all that time, whether you're on the road or, working in the studio or whatever you're doing out there, you're not pissing away a rent check every month. And over time, the value of that check that you're putting back into that is going to be an asset that 30, 20 years from now is going to be a nest egg for you, as you find that. And I think musicians would all really benefit a lot, like working artists in general, and from just kind of a personal finance and finance literacy kind of course for these things. And I think there's a great number of resources out there to check out on if you're looking for real estate stuff. I highly recommend Bigger Pockets, which is, podcast. Even better set of resources online in terms of forums and tools and stuff to kind of teach you about real estate lending and all that side of things. So I couldn't recommend them any more than I do right now. I listen to that podcast pretty regularly.
Yeah, I would say I'm a little bit of a Bigger Pockets fanatic. I listen to their money podcast, their rookie podcast.
They're one of those guys on the podcast, and have them come on and teach a little bit for real estate to everybody listening out there.
Yeah, that's the goal. Like real estate investing for musicians. I think that will be a lot of value in that for sure. So I was looking at you guys' website for Works Entertainment, and I noticed you have a few day-to-day managers. Can you explain the difference between like a day-to-day manager and an artist manager? And how many artists does like a day-to-day manager typically work with? And I'm sure it's different for each company.
Yeah, I think it really depends on, client and organization and kind of the working relationships you have with clients. And, Works Entertainment has a pretty high spread of services that we offer for our clients. We essentially, if you want to, we'll come and work every part of your business. And so you can just focus on the creating side of things. So everything from, helping with personal finances with your business manager to, like end to end. If you want us to run your label, we can do all that. So for us, it works. It's really David and myself, and we call our day-to-day managers because it's a way of kind of signifying point of contact and on level of detail of work that they're doing. But I think all of our team are very capable and super talented folks that probably could manage in their own right. But it's really about kind of the where you sit with the level of detail and responsibility you're getting into. So from a day-to-day management perspective, our day-to-days are way more involved in kind of the intricacies of timing of things like social posts, scheduling, kind of the administrative things that I probably lose track of relatively quickly, and are much more concerned for the day-to-day details of work. I still care about those things, and I hammer it into our heads of every one of our teammates, much to their chagrins, about paying attention to the details, and probably frustrates people when I do actually put my fingers down into the details of things. But my job is really to be looking from a 15 to 30,000 kind of view of organizing team and marshaling resources and putting things together and identifying kind of timelines for things. Then it's really the role of the day-to-day is to kind of keep everybody to task, to kind of march to those orders. So that's the way that we have our company kind of set up and structured. And typically a day-to-day handles anywhere between 2 and 4 clients, depending on the size of the clients and the workload of the clients. So I think it really depends on how much work. If your clients are not working that often, it's really easy to stack a couple clients on top of a day-to-day that for a client that's not touring a phenomenal amount or does limited business, then they can take on more clients. But I know plenty of day-to-day managers out there at other companies that are just day-to-day for just one artist, right. And it's because the workload of that one artist will keep them singly focused on their work all the time. So
whenever I talk about day-to-day managers, I think about Shep Gordon, a story that he shared once. And he says he had like 100 artists that he's worked with which sounds insane for one person. But I know a lot of them are like also like celebrity chefs. But he always says, if you need to see this face, and he like two different types of deals. He says, if you need to see this face, it's 20%. If you don't need to see this face, it's 15%. Those are like his two types of deals. That's like I always think about.
I haven't heard that line from Shep, but that's a pretty good one out there. I mean, it's a hard world for managers to be getting 20% out there. Is pretty competitive, but back then that's probably pretty good analogy there. Yeah. Yeah, it's we spend FaceTime with all of our clients, and I try to make sure that they feel the love in that. But they know, and I tell this from the beginning. I'm like, you don't want me managing the details of your calendar or caring about that kind of stuff. There's like people that are way better suited or organized to be able to do that than I am, and so I need to be kind of out there, out of the trenches a little bit, looking for opportunities on a wider scale. Is kind of how we position our relationships.
Yeah. So as I was recording, of course, and we have no idea how much longer we're going to deal with COVID-19. It seems right now never ending. How has it affected your artists and the way you do business? And have you come up with like any other ways, like where maybe your artists have pivoted and come up with different revenue streams or different ways to build their artist brand during these times?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly been a challenging time. We've moved something like 600 shows. I think we moved like 200 shows twice at this point. And so, we're kind of the mindset these days where we don't think there'll be an environment where there'll be shows until maybe the end of 2021. And so we're really stressing to our clients, fortunately, most of our clients have been relatively conservatively managed from a cash perspective and kind of have money to kind of ride these things out. But I think our clients also benefit from the fact that we were, one of the first, I would say, management companies to really embrace Patreon in a major way. And so we were using Patreon in 2014. We've got clients that are grossing, tens of thousands of dollars a month on Patreon. That has really helped kind of fuel their either label business or kind of content creation businesses, or, in many cases alone, kind of been fortunately the thing that kind of drives their monthly income, and then touring and all the kind of ancillary stuff on top of that is just additional businesses. So we were lucky to have a lot of clients there and not to have painful conversations with clients about how we ride out 18 months without touring, because quite frankly there aren't many musicians that are probably in the case of being able to do that effectively, like pay your bills, cover your kind of stuff to the point where we think reliably here, like touring volumes, I don't think are coming back until 2023. That we're like, you have to realize that 17, 18, and 19 were some of the biggest years in touring in the history of the world. Right. And like if you weren't printing money then, I don't know what to say, because it was such a really great time in concerts, and I just don't think that we get back to those levels anytime in the next couple of years. So we've been really telling our clients very candidly, like, we need to figure out a way out of this. That changes your lifestyle, that adapts to your business, so that we can kind of fit a new world. And so the clients that weren't using Patreon, we have in many cases started these things up. We've pivoted to a lot of D2C businesses at this point with our clients, whether that be additional merchandise offerings, or in a lot of cases like lessons or instructional kind of master classes, building out these kind of like content and educational libraries. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately too, out of our 9 clients, I think 3 right now are on major labels, and the remainder are either independent or joint venture deals too. And so to be able to have the monthly income from distribution, wherever that might be, STEM and Grooves or Orchard, where we've got our partnerships at, to have those kind of monthly streams come in has really been a helpful thing for us and our clients, to not be relying on advances or royalty checks that come every 6 months, or PRO money that comes every 6 months. And so I don't know what about our business we decided 4 or 5 years ago to kind of really pivot into that space, but I'm fortunate that we are, because a lot of management businesses I think went from 100% revenue to 0% revenue overnight. And we were fortunate to be fractional of that because of our interest in labels and other businesses. It's still very, very tough out there right now, but it's not, existentially tough out there because we've been able to diversify over the years. So, I think a lot of people have swarmed the live stream space as well too. I'm not particularly bullish on that as a long-term, interest in music. And so I think it's a nice niche market that kind of serves some appetite of fans that really crave an interaction with bands. But at the end of the day, I think humans have a fundamental need to gather, and I think there is really something like biomechanically different about live music versus recorded music that, I mean, is proven and shown that it's just, you can't get the same experience. And so, I watch my clients' live streams because I want to support my clients, but I don't necessarily, I tell my clients, like, I really don't enjoy it. So, as much as I would a live performance, So I think it's going to be harder and harder and harder to, for all these artists that were out there relying heavily on live to exist for, 2 years without finding a way to pivot into whatever that might be, whether that be, independent content creation, podcasts, more D2C offerings, lessons, whatever it might be, to just kind of get by. It's challenging.
I always relate the live experience to like the 12 stages of intimacy, and you use the first 10 for business, but basically if you're watching somebody on a screen, like the stages of intimacy stop at number 3. Like, I see you, see me, that's it. Like, there's no touching, there's no celebrating together, hugging each other, sharing a beer together. Like, that doesn't exist. I mean, I guess we could kind of share a beer together, right? But not really.
No, I've done a few of those actually. I've during COVID, I've had like friends reach out and say, like, like, would it be like on text or Zoom or something, and we'll have like the last waltz or something, and we all enjoy like a concert experience. Pearl Jam's got a great one that's out there just in terms of like watching concert experiences that are well shot and well done. Those are great, but those are phenomenally expensive. I think if you're looking at like the kind of Brad Paisley did his Bud Light live stream here in Nashville a few weeks ago, right around Memorial Day weekend, and that kind of production is $50-$60 to kind of shoot. It's like not every artist is going to drop that for what is ostensibly a marketing exercise in the day, right. Production.
Right.
You're not going to see a lot of that content. You're going to see a lot of like mono on phone kind of camera phone kind of stuff, and that's just I think that the appetite for that is very, very thin at the end of the day.
You brought up Patreon, and it's something I'm a big advocate for, at least whether it's Patreon or some kind of subscription model to add to an artist's business. So for like the DIY artists out there that have a decent following, they're doing music full time, what types of content have you seen, or would you recommend an artist put out on Patreon to make their Patreon page interesting and want to get people to join that and pitch in $5 or $10 a month, whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think just extended access to you as an artist, whether that be answering more comments or participating more actively in Q&As / live streams. You can always do exclusive behind the scenes stuff that's completely paywalled in terms of additional content. But I think artists, I would never underestimate the value of like written word or blogs or poems or whatever types of mediums. It doesn't necessarily need to be about music. It could be just your thoughts in general, kind of sparking a conversation. I think people really appreciate that. I always loved Amanda Palmer's Patreon page, which is Amanda Palmer is making things. It's not Amanda Palmer's making music, and it was just kind of a wide variety of art, thoughts, collections of those kind of things. And at the end of the day, it was a phenomenally successful Patreon campaign, and still is to this day, and it's really just all about the cult of personality and community around an artist. And I think if you can build community inside that space, people will definitely pay access for it. So just spurring conversation, encouraging interaction, encouraging friendship, really creates a place where people will sign up and pay $5. But I think it's a curated experience at the end of the day that includes things like your music, your demos, your thoughts, your blogs, whatever. All those things are great to offer up to people. You're doing this podcast, right?
What's that?
You're doing one for this podcast, right?
I am, yeah. It's more of an academy where I teach lessons so I look at it as more as like an artist development program. So speaking of teaching, we spoke about teaching before we started recording. I like the live classroom experience when I'm teaching, right? Or at least whether it's classroom or online. A lot of people that are like in the world that I'm in, the podcasting world, they all have a course they sell. And I kind of wanted to take the punk rock approach and not create a course. And what course would I create? Probably a course on touring. And right now, if I were selling a course on touring, that would not do very well because it's not relevant during these times. So it's live classes that I teach every month. And then anybody that's like a student can join live. And then they always have access to the back archive. So I just started in April. So, the longer this goes on, I feel like the more valuable the back archive is. And since it is live, we can go into like relevant and current topics versus here's a course on touring and you're probably not going to tour for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I think that's brilliant. I think podcasters have found a phenomenal space in that. I think, what I've also really appreciated over the last maybe 2 or 3 years is the number of thought leaders in music business that are on Patreon as well too. You've got like Sherry Hugh out there who's just writing phenomenal stuff out there. If you're not like reading her newsletters and watering music or subscribe to her Patreon page where she offers exclusive content, like you're really missing out on valuable insight in the business. And the same thing for David Turner at Penny Fractions, another great music business letter that comes out for those things. So I think, it's a brand new world for creators out there in terms of being able to be, not just musicians and artists and poets. I mean, Patreon's full of weird things on there if you really dive into what's on there. But if you want to run a music business trade publication, you can essentially do it out of your, bedroom if you wanted to using Patreon.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
exactly.
Should be on.
How often do your artists on average share like content on Patreon? Is it weekly? Is it a couple times a month? And what would your recommendation be based on what you've seen?
I would say at least once a week for most of my artists, actually. And that's not always like a full blown like music video or like new song or whatever. It might just be like a, hey, here's what we're up to kind of thing. This is what's going on, or like a, comical thought from one of the band members about something that they saw recently, or, an hour-long kind of Q&A where they're sitting at the piano and just kind of catching up on a Friday night talking to patrons. Those kind of things are great. I think that's, reasonably for somebody that you're paying, whether it be per creation, releasing. A lot of people don't do that as much anymore. We've got a few clients that do. But the per month model, I think you should at least offer something once a week for somebody to kind of have that kind of repeated habit formation that comes with kind of expectation of content. So, I mean, you can do once a month. I've seen people do, the minimum that you need to, but I think at the end of the day, if you're really trying to build a community in the business and engagement, it needs to be weekly.
Yeah. I always say the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, totally. I don't think people really, unfortunately, want to be on Patreon all the time. I think it's still kind of clunky sometimes as a platform. And so, it's not like Discord, which like I think building communities on Discord for a lot of artists is a really interesting way to kind of cultivate music. I've seen work with a handful of clients that you've used Discord to kind of intersect gaming and their community very effectively. But Patreon app isn't like great for live chat. There's like a lot of there's a lot of things that are wrong still with the Patreon experience, and I think that they've kind of deferred that off to private partnership kind of experiences with Discord and other apps like that. So I think the more places you can kind of build community, the better. Find what your touch point is. Try to cater to your audience in terms of like technical stylings and how you think they'd prefer to communicate. Whether that be using, we're using SMS for a lot of clients now too through community and cultivating that way too. So. Wherever your fans are, go there, Patreon is a nice way to kind of create it. But if Patreon is the vector to like a paying entry to that, find the tools that you need to kind of create a community where your fans feel comfortable accessing it on a daily basis, and you'll see the rewards from it. So
you talked about Discord. So I recently joined this investment community, and they use Discord. It's actually the first time I actually used the platform and got to engage with it.
What investment community?
So it's a day trading thing. I'm a big, I don't know if you're familiar with James Altucher, but he talks about day trading a lot, and I've dabbled in it a little bit and have been successful, but I definitely have learned that it's a science and an art form. So it's like a day trading community where you learn how to actually read charts and all that stuff. Pretty interesting, but I'm going on a long side tangent on that. And I just found it really interesting, the way the platform works and the way you can set up all these different types of groups within the platform. I guess, could you tell me a little bit more on how that could be beneficial for artists, or even like an SMS strategy to build a community? Because I feel like there's so much focus on Patreon and Facebook groups and email newsletters. And I feel like Discord or SMS groups can be a great way to build a community as well.
Yeah. I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with Discord, it's a instant message, platform. It's a real-time chat. It's highly customizable. I'm not, we probably started using this 2 or 3 years ago. So, well, maybe I guess now 2 years ago is kind of the first time we got on Discord in early 2019. But it's got a very similar look to like Slack. If you've ever used Slack before, it's pretty customizable. You can create public and private servers. You can designate administrators. You can come up with custom colors and privileges and welcome letters. And there's a lot of high-end automation that can kind of put people through a nurturing community chain pretty quickly, which is a great touch point on fans, to be able to kind of invite people and take people through a process of what it means to kind of enjoy this, your music and be a part of the community that supports one another and the music that's being created out of it. So, I mean, I think if you look at nearly every big influencer has a phenomenal Discord channel. That'd be Ninja, for example, like out of the gaming world of things. I mean, his Discord community is gigantic, but you've got people like YouTube influencers like Phil DeFranco or Grace Helbig or the Try Guys. They all have their own Discords as well too. It's a pretty gigantic platform, but I think it's just a phenomenal way to start curating real-time community with your fans. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great place for just people to hang out and feel like they're hanging out with people that are similar to them. And, it's just a phenomenal way to communicate with artist communities. And so, it's got a lot of scalable things to it that, DMs on Instagram or SMS don't have, in terms of being able to kind of automate community and prompt automation and widely answer or communicate to fans. Mm-hmm. And so I think that makes it a very attractive platform to use versus like SMS. We've been dabbling in SMS for 6 months or so now, and we've been utilizing Community, which is the SMS platform that Ashton Kutcher, basically broke Verizon with in 2019. It's every time you see an artist, text me at 615 blah 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 blah, they're likely using Community, and it is a direct SMS app that's available in North America, so U.S. and Canada, and it has a few automation tools that make it easy for you to widely communicate, one to many to your fans, and then give kind of a personal feel and touch to responses and questions, because they break it down by sentiment, like loving, loving, question, thanks, and happy, and or something like that. So you can kind of go through and mass respond to a lot of questions. And so the case studies on Discord and SMS, I would think, really show through on just open rates and engagement. Yeah. A lot of people are just I'm a huge proponent of building great email lists. I think that's really important to building big D2C businesses, and having a really effectively run mailing list is a central part of like an artist's digital life, and you have to figure out a way to do that effectively. But I think you need to go a step deeper these days in order to be really engaging fans where they are. And there's so much noise out there. There's, you're getting hit up from a variety of touch points, but the one thing that I think we all do is, answer text messages.
Yeah, very true.
You've seen some crazy stats on SMS, like 60 to 80% open rates and 25% click-through rates. I mean, it's nuts. I've yet to do a gigantic campaign with one. We're just kind of in pre-audience building with a few of our artists, but it's interesting to see how the platform is developed over time and how it's going. So I think it's a great way for artists to connect with fans, and would encourage everybody to check it out.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I definitely want to learn more about Discord, especially now after talking to you, because I always say one of the goals is to figure out how you can have direct access to your fans, and not rent your fans, right? Whether it's like on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, because you're just renting your fans there. Those platforms can change their algorithms at any moment without any notice. And all of a sudden, the only way you can reach your fans is by spending a ton of money. So I feel like figure out strategies to send them to Discord, SMS, email, whatever it is. I feel like that's the way to go. Maybe worst case scenario, Facebook groups. It's still better than your Facebook page, but Facebook groups is not as powerful as those other three. I guess, what is a good strategy to send people to your SMS group or your Discord or email list? Like, what's a good opt-in or incentive to give them versus instead of like the free download?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. Most recently we saw Run the Jewels, give out their entire album download for free. And I think giving away entire albums or entire songs for downloads is a decent way in. But in 2020, when so much of consumption is not based on owning an MP3, I don't think it matters that much. So maybe it's a download, as a sentiment with some cool behind-the-scenes photos or videos that you can't get anywhere else. Those kind of exclusive offerings for things, or maybe it's a discount code for some cool merchandise. I think something that simple where you're offering 30 or 40% off in your store for the first time purchase to come in, and you've got a really compelling offering can be enough to get people onto an email list. The download thing was the Vogue thing for 7 or 8 years there. I feel like everyone was just giving away free music, and that was a way to do it. But I think having a really compelling automated nurture campaign is also a really huge part of that as well too. We spend a lot of time kind of tracking kind of like fan journeys through artists' websites and how they interact with things, and MailChimp's got a lot of really powerful automation tools that you can automate nurture campaigns. So when somebody signs up, you kind of give them like, here's what to kind of expect from me, and then send them a personal note every couple days with a new piece of content they might like, and then based on that content, you can send them other content they may have done. You can kind of create chains and trees from there. At the end of it, if they make it through, give them an offer code to your store or to a download link or to a pre-save link or whatever you might be working on. I think those are really great and effective things. And if they're well written and they're authentic and what you're targeting in terms of fans and their appetites and what audiences really want to hear about your music, and you do that well, people are going to want to listen to a new thing, curated for them if it's done well. So I think just making sure that you're hitting the right people with the right funnels and kind of right journeys through your catalog or your body of work is an important thing to do.
Absolutely. Can you explain a little bit more, like maybe what would make a good nurture campaign and what a nurture campaign is for those that are hearing that term for the first time, and maybe how many? So if it's through email, like how many emails are in that sequence, or what does a nurture campaign look like on SMS, and can you do that on Discord as well?
Yeah, you can do it on both places. And I'm by no means an expert on this. And I fortunately have a team of great digital folks who kind of support the finer details of what I'm going to generally talk about here. But for those that aren't familiar, a nurture campaign is a kind of an initial chain of emails or engagements that you might have with a new fan or a customer in the kind of email sign-up process. Or in the case of Discord, you can do similar things on Discord where you can welcome people through and create, automatic invitations to certain servers based on interactions. But essentially it's a way to kind of welcome a new customer to your community and kind of run them through your kind of general ethos and mission and offerings. So if you're a musician out there with a nurture campaign, it's here's the kind of work and music that I do, and here's what I've written for me. If you came to this page liking this song, you probably also like this music, and I encourage you to check this out. And here's where I'm at on socials, and you can find me here on Discord. And all those kind of things are great initial interactions that you can kind of take fans through. And it might be, I've seen nurture campaigns as many as like 7 kind of on a day kind of things. I think at a baseline, every artist needs to have a really strong welcome letter, just welcoming people in. If that's it, just an automated response, that's great. But take it one step further and maybe prompt a question or a poll or engagement and say, what did you like about us? Like, what type of music do you like? And then based on that, you can kind of create a chain of responses that kind of tailor your fans' interest to parts of your music, So if you're a band that is pretty eclectic and you do a little bit of rock, a little pop, give them the option to kind of go through those things and send them songs they may like. And so I think, an appropriate number for a nurture campaign is anywhere between, 3 and 5, and you do that over like the course of a week or so. Maybe it's 10 days, for that, and that's just meant to kind of show people that, like, hey, you signed up for a thing. I'm not here to spam you. This is authentic content, and here's what to expect of me. So when my name pops up in your inbox, like, it's going to be stuff that you're going to want to look at. And I think that's training the fan to do that early, because it's just challenging to get through inboxes on a daily basis.
Yeah.
250 emails a day, and I've never seen a lot of my inbox. So if you're emailing me stuff, for sure, I for sure have lost it somewhere in there.
Right. Yeah. I was so the first time I fell, I guess, for a nurture campaign, I kind of learned about it. I always say, because of that campaign, is to add as much value as possible in that campaign. So it was this fitness guy, Sean Stevenson. I signed up for his newsletter, and I got like 5 emails within a few days, and then each email kind of ended with, I will give you a little more info, or we'll talk a little bit more in the next email. So it's kind of like prepping the expectation of the next email. But it was like all these great tips. And by the time I got to the third email, like, I was like, wow, I'm learning so much from these emails. Like, how do I give you my money? And then boom, there comes the 5th email, and here's this elaborate package that they're trying to sell you. And I was like, oh, that was a nurture campaign I just fell into. And I don't know, but I just feel like the more value you offer, the better your ask or call to action towards the end of the campaign is going to be.
Yeah, totally. I don't know what nurture campaign got me, but I recall it was probably one of the finance ones, whether it be like the Hustle or the Morning Brew or one of those guys. They do really great nurture campaigns, kind of walking you through what their community looks like, and when it's well done, you're like, you really get into it,
Yeah.
And I think people assume that's really easy to do, and I think what I've learned about that is it's phenomenally hard to do. It's a lot of A/B testing. It's a lot of just tweaking and seeing how things run through things, and it's a lot of specificity in those things. It's not that easy to land, funnel campaigns. People we'll just throw up a landing page, we'll just throw up a lead capture page, and then we'll retarget this way. And I'm like, it's not that easy. You have to have great creative. You have to test it, at a couple points, and then you got to retest it at scale. It's all these things are great things for consumer packaged goods and the kind of more larger scale things that have $1 million to throw at a budget for an artist there, that's trying to get people to stream an album or a new song or a new single or buy a new piece of merchandise or a concert ticket. It's not as easy as it sounds, for sure. And you got to be really on your game to do it well, I would say. So when it's well done, I really do appreciate it.
And I want to encourage all the artists that are listening to not just give up, right? If you create a nurture campaign and it's not working, like, this doesn't work. Like, I've rewritten my nurture campaign 3 times, and I still feel like I need to tweak it because I'm not getting the results that I was hoping to get from the nurture campaign I've created. So it's a never-ending process, and yes, it takes people that are great copywriters and great marketers to really come up with a great campaign. So it's like, if you're doing it on your own, you can't afford those people. Like, just be patient and test things out. That's kind of be my advice to the artists out there. And then speaking of like getting people on your nurture campaign or on your opt-in, like, one of the ways I always preach about building communities is through content, having consistent content. That's kind of like more like the closer to the top of funnel awareness, right? And I noticed pretty much almost every artist on your roster has consistent videos on YouTube or Facebook, some both. So what, I guess, can you say about the importance of having some kind of content strategy that's consistent, recurring content, whether it's weekly or monthly, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a lot of power in kind of habit formation with audiences, and learning to expect every Tuesday at 2 or whatever, kind of the appointment television kind of stuff that we've kind of come to understand through the lens of the YouTube world of things. I mean, there is literally an algorithmic importance of having consistent content on YouTube. That's how they measure and look at your channel is kind of as having a consistent pulse. If it's once a month or it's once a week, whatever it is, be consistent beyond those times is what routinely YouTube will tell you is one of the keys to success of performing well in their algorithm. So there is just a very baseline fundamental performance of making sure that you are consistent at a time of the month or the time of the week, ideally, where you're kind of creating a heartbeat for your page. It's just kind of consistent beats of engagement is how that's viewed. And so I think I take that lens, because YouTube is such a powerful platform for discovery for so many artists. And, if you're kind of basing your content strategy around YouTube, everything else kind of follows suit around that. But I think, I think on a daily basis, it's important to be on stories and, snaps and TikTok, if you're on that as well too, every couple days, finding a post, finding stuff that's like the consistent mix of consistency but authentic, I think is really important, and I think authenticity from an artist perspective is like, an artist may like posting about some weird anime stuff, and fans may love anime stuff, and it's just like, the kind of cross section of the things that they like and that their fans like, that's what authenticity is, and that's what you're aiming for every time. So as much as that as you can create, you should do it at least daily, on socials. And then when it comes down to, music, I think release strategies, depends by genre and kind of fan base and how you activate and put that music out through your fan base. So, there's some people in some genres that are fine, operating on the more like rock, album cycle situations and new music every, year or 18 months or whatever it might be, and I think there's a world that does fine for. But I'm a huge proponent of as much music as you can that's great and fits to your brand, and then get enough out there. I mean, you literally can't have enough out there right now.
I agree.
So we've got clients doing anywhere between 24 and 26 songs a year. Like basically once every 2 weeks, depending on some stuff. Some of that stuff's covers and YouTube stuff, but it performs. It's hard to write that much great music and produce that much great music in a year. But a cool cover or a cool arrangement of something can be a nice, great thing to release to your fans as well too.
So I'm still waiting for the day for someone to take on the Gary Vee challenge and put out a song every single day for a year, but actually make some traction with it too. That would be at least decent to good content most of the time, because if you're putting up that much music, I don't know if it can be great every time.
I mean, like when you think about like, writers writing at like the kind of publisher rates here in Nashville, where you got to turn in, whatever minimum delivery commitments of 10, 20 songs a year, whatever. It's that's a phenomenal amount of work to write and record 365 songs would take you like 2 years, I think, to do.
Yeah, for real. I feel like if there's anyone that could do it is this producer Zaytoven, because he says he produces multiple songs a day, and sometimes it only takes him like 10 minutes to produce like a beat or a new song. But I don't know, maybe it's a different world. But anyways, I could probably talk content and the customer journey with you all day long, go for hours. And then we're quickly running out of time. Let me see if I can get a couple of basic questions in. What do you look for in an artist that you potentially work with as a management client?
For us, it's checking a lot of boxes. It's we don't jump right into music management relationships with clients, because we view those as really long-term partnerships, and those things have to be strategically selected and have to be the right fit for both sides. So we're pretty selective when it comes down to picking management clients. And a few of the lenses is are you an authentic creator? Can you create? And I think that is a talent kind of evaluation that we, are lucky and fortunate to work with very talented people that can make something amazing. Because if you can't do that and you're just kind of like plugging it through the motions, you're reliant on outside forces to kind of control your work. And we don't really like being in that position at the end of the day, for having our backs against the wall. If we need publishers to kind of give us songs to make this thing all work and shine, the end of the day, if we can't find a way to get this to connect and for this person to their work to get out there, it's not going to be a fit for us. And then we are a very business-minded organization. We always joke that we are a for-profit corporation for sure, and we like to build for-profit businesses. And so having business partners, of artists that understand the music business, or at least want to learn about it. I like to spend a phenomenal amount of time talking with my artists about like the mechanics of the music business and the recording business and how things work, and provide resources or share podcasts that I'm listening to or articles that I read that I found interesting about a certain topic, and talk those through, because I think, artists are entrepreneurs and they need to have an understanding of their business. And phenomenal people walk into the business and not really know where you're making money or how you're making money or the mechanics and economics of their business. And I think that's a dangerous place to operate from. So, we look for people that just, we're fine with people handing their businesses over to us and us just, running entirely. But, when it comes down to like big decision-making things, we like artists to be really informed by that. And so having a bit of a mind at work is important for us as well, too. So, and then, we just have to get along fine at a personal level, too. That's it's a personal relationship. That if I don't like you and you don't like me, it's not going to work over time. I don't care how much money we make together. It's going to be miserable for both of us. So fundamentally, you have to not be a dick, I guess. And that's kind of the three things that I generally look for in an artist.
What are some good? So you love having artists that are kind of educated and informed about the music business. So it's probably be the last question I'll ask you, since we're almost out of time. What are some of your favorite resources to share with artists where they can learn more about the fundamentals of the music business and just how it all works, to kind of get the ball rolling with at least their DIY or independent start of their career before they build their team up?
Yeah, I think just taking the time to kind of learn and understand some of these businesses for yourself before you hand it over to somebody else. And so there's never been more resources for entrepreneurs in e-commerce than there are right now. There's YouTube videos, there's podcasts, there's blogs, there's all the things to teach you about the mechanics of building the basics of a well SEO'd, well managed, great customer service e-commerce business. You can do it, with 20, 30 hours of watching YouTube videos. You can create a very effective platform to deliver whatever it might be, from albums to experiences to, hats to shirts to whatever. It's all out there and available to you. And so if you have questions about it, check out Shopify Masters, check out any number of things you can pop into YouTube and just educate yourself about how to run those businesses, because as much as you need to build a team and add people to replace some of those things, you need to understand how those businesses run and how you're going to be selling them as the artist. 'Cause at the end of the day, you're going to be the salesperson out there on the road slinging this. You are the artist's most important job is to deliver music and content and engagement on a daily basis and be the personality. It's effectively a sales role within an organization, by and large. It's a bit of creation, it's a bit of operation, but it's a lot of sales. And you need to know how to sell yourself and sell your business and how it operates. And I think not a lot of people take the time to do that, and are surprisingly devoid of understanding the economics on how those businesses work. So educate yourself. That's the biggest thing I can offer. There's great resources like this podcast, that you can be listening to kind of get a leg up on things. There's so many things out there that there's really just no excuse to, if you spend the time and have an internet connection and a laptop, you have a world of free education out there for you. If you just take the time to do it and seek it out.
Right. And I love how you didn't necessarily mention specific music industry, music business, focused podcasts or videos or things like that, because there's so much you can learn from just other businesses. And a lot of times the other ones tend to do it better first, and then music business kind of learns on how other people do business. There's a lot of the leaders in the DIY space. They are learning from marketers and strategists in other industries. So like anything that we've talked about today, I just want to encourage people to kind of just Google those terms or YouTube those terms, and don't put music with it, and just see what comes up first. And then maybe later on, Google it with music and then see how you can incorporate it with music. But there's so much you can do as an independent musician these days. But I know you have another meeting. Before I ask you the last question, I just want to say thanks so much for being on the podcast. I know we've been trying to do this for a long time, and thanks for the information you put out there too with Promoter 101. I don't know if you guys are planning on coming back or not, but it's a great resource, a great way to learn about the industry. If there's some insider baseball that people don't understand that you guys talk about, like Google those things. I mean, if you don't know what a certain thing is that you hear on Promoter 101, Google that stuff, because there's such great information out there and so many great guests that you guys have on the show. So just thanks for what you've put out into the industry as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and what you're doing here for everybody is phenomenal. But if you want to ever check out Promoter 101, we've got more than 200 episodes. We've been doing we kind of paused the podcast in 2019 after about 210 episodes. But we've got more than 250 industry interviews from the heads of major agencies to Michael Rapino, the CEO of Live Nation, to artist managers to artists, and so it's a lot about the live entertainment business, and it's really a huge passion project for my good friend Dan Steinberg, who's at Emporium Presents in Seattle, and has done what is essentially like a love letter anthology to the live entertainment industry for like the last 20 years. It's like all the characters that Dan kind of came up through, if you look at through that lens, and it's I always enjoyed the book, The Mailroom, A Hollywood History from the Ground Up. If you've never read it, it's a book by David Resnick. It's really about the William Morris mailroom from 1950 to 2000, or no, I think it was 2003 was last year. They had like an anthology of all the kind of people that kind of came through the business. It's phenomenal to kind of hear those names and be interacting with those names on a daily basis and kind of get the story of this guy built this market in this place and sold it to this company, and it is quite the kind of anthology, the live music business, and something that I'm just really glad that he got to preserve. So that was cool to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely an awesome resource, and I think I've listened to probably every single episode of that podcast.
Thank you, man. Yeah.
And then the question I always ask everyone at the end is, what's your definition of making it?
Making it, man. Man, so much of it is just happiness these days. You run very fast after wealth. You run very fast for money, and I think a lot of people rush into this business for fame or whatever. The kind of material things about it. But at the end of the day, happiness is that if I can be safe and happy, it's fortunate. In these kind of crazy COVID times, you realize what you're very fortunate for, and having my health and having my safety, and as a general level, happiness is better than money in the bank these days. So